Welcome to Get Your FRQ On. This question is from 1998. It's question 3, and it is calculator active. In the question stem, we have a graph of a function v of t and a table of values corresponding to the graph of v of t. And the information we have provided to us is good for values of t between 0 and 50. And in part A of the question, we are asked to determine on what intervals the acceleration is positive and to provide justification. So because the graph and the table we have is of v of t, we need to justify our answer based on what's given. So the acceleration of the function will be positive when v of t is increasing, because the acceleration is the rate of change for velocity. So the acceleration of the car is positive when the graph of v of t is increasing. We are provided with the graph of v of t, so determining these intervals should be relatively simple. The graph of v of t is increasing on the interval from 0 to 35 and from 45 to 50. Therefore, the acceleration of the car is positive between 0 and 35 and 45 and 50. Now, it's always a good idea to explicitly state that you are answering the question. Here, the question is about the acceleration being positive. If we just have that the graph of v of t is increasing on these intervals along with the first statement, it's kind of minimalist, but you might get all the points for that. If you don't have the first statement, you should have the last two. Just having that middle statement I don't think would be enough. And I think it's probably better to finish with a statement where you talk about the acceleration being positive, since that is what you are being asked to determine. In part B, we are asked to find the average acceleration of the car over the interval from 0 to 50. This is just an average rate of change question. So if we go to our table, we can find values for v of t and v of 0 to put into the formula for average rate of change. So if we show our work, v of 50 minus v of 0 over 50 minus 0, getting those values from the table. 72 minus 0 over 50, 36 over 25. If we reduce that, and that's going to be feet per second per second. Now, this is a calculator active question, so if you use your calculator and determine that the average acceleration is 1.44 feet per second, that's fine. But just having 36 over 25 feet per second or some equivalent of that would also be sufficient. Just because it's a calculator active question doesn't mean a calculator is necessary in order to answer it. In part C of this question, we are asked to approximate the acceleration of the car at t equals 40 and show our computations that lead to this approximation. Now, normally the expectation for a question like this, where we're approximating a rate of change at a specific value, would mean we're going to find the average rate of change over an interval that contains that value of t. All right, so in this case, we are interested in t equals 40. Typically, you would find the average rate of change here, or the approximate acceleration at t equals 40 by using the average rate of change of the velocity over 35 to 40, since that's the smallest interval you can get, which has t equals 40 on the interior. You can use other intervals, but typically your acceleration approximation won't be as good. And this is just the easiest way to do it, I think. Use the smallest interval there. So if we use the formula for average rate of change with t equals 45 and t equals 35, we get v of 45 minus v of 35 over 45 minus 35. Values for v of 45 and v of 35 we can take right from the table that were provided. 60 minus 81 is negative 21. So the approximate acceleration at t equals 40 would be negative 21 tenths feet per second. Or as a decimal, it is calculator active, negative 2.1 feet per second. So the approximate acceleration at t equals 40 would be negative 2.1 feet per second per second. In part D, we are asked to approximate the value of the definite integral from 0 to 50 of v of t dt using 5 intervals, using the midpoints, and explain its meaning. Now, when you are given specific directions like this, use 5 intervals, make sure you use midpoints, you have to do what is asked. All right, so our 5 intervals, we're going to use midpoints, so we're going to go between the first and third endpoints. That'll be our second one, so v of 5, and then v of 15, v of 25, v of 35, v of 45. Notice that all of these widths are 10. So one of the things you have to keep in mind is they will be looking for a product of sums, or a sum of products, right? Here we have a product, 10 times this sum. Or you could distribute this and have 10 times v of 5 plus 10 times v of 15, so you'd have a sum of products. And then make sure that when it comes to v of 5 and v of 15, you do substitute those values in. All right, how are you getting your answer of 2,530 if you're not showing what numbers you're using? All right, these numbers you can get directly from the table. V of 5 is 12, v of 15 is 30, and so on. So you must show these computations. It is a calculator active question, so you can let the calculator do the arithmetic for you. When you add up all those function values for v of t, you get 253. Multiply that by 10, you get 2,530. And then don't forget to explain the meaning of this as well. Since the velocity function is our v of t, integrating the velocity function gets our position function. So if the integral from 0 to 50 of v of t dt is 2,530, that means that in that 50-second span from 0 to 50, the car traveled 2,530 feet. Now, when you make a statement like this, you need to be specific. It needs to be clear to the reader that you are referring specifically to the interval from 0 to 50. A couple of ways you can do this, right? The way I did it was I said over the first 50 seconds. Without that word first, they have no idea where I'm starting at. With that word first, they know I'm starting at 0 and then going through the first 50 seconds, so 0 to 50. Or you can just explicitly state that the car traveled a total of 2,530 feet over the interval of, t equals 0 to t equals 50. Right, but you have to indicate it's not just any 50-second interval here. It is specifically that first 50-second interval, and that must be clear to the reader in order to get those points. I hope you enjoyed this solution. I hope you learned a lot from it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. I'm just now starting to add more solutions to my channel, as well as the calculator tutorials. And I hope you'll join me next time as we try to get 4s and 5s on the AP Calculus exam by getting our FRQ on.